The termination letter was printed on heavy 80-pound linen stock. I sat at the far end of the polished mahogany boardroom table in downtown Seattle. My name is Elias. I'm 34 years old. I operate as a senior quantitative analyst specializing in hostile corporate mergers and acquisitions. My father slid the single sheet of paper across the table with deliberate slowness. It officially severed my equity stake in our family logistics firm. It revoked my access to a generational trust fund valued at exactly $22,415,800. He did not look at me when he spoke the harsh words. He stated that I lacked the killer instinct required for modern corporate warfare. He called my analytical methods weak and overly cautious. My mother sat beside him and slowly stirred her black coffee. She added that the business needed a savage predator at the helm. She believed my older brother possessed this mythical predatory gene. I did not raise my voice or defend my professional record. I simply calculated the immediate tax implications of an involuntary equity surrender. My brother smirked from the opposite side of the massive glass window. He was currently wearing a bespoke suit funded entirely by my optimized routing algorithms. Our family logistics firm generated exactly $48,250,900 in gross revenue last year. I personally engineered the automated dispatch software that created 60% of that profit. They were discarding the architect to hand the keys to a glorified salesman. They fundamentally misunderstood where the actual power in the company resided. Before I explain the mechanics of their impending failure, I need to know something. Where are you listening from right now, and what is the exact time? Drop your location and the time in the comments below. Let us return to the boardroom execution. I picked up the heavy brass fountain pen resting on the table. I signed my name perfectly on the designated line. I did not hesitate or beg them for a pathetic second chance. I pushed the signed termination letter back across the smooth, polished wood. I stood up and buttoned my tailored charcoal jacket. I gathered my encrypted laptop and walked out of the glass double doors. I left behind a lifetime of toxic emotional manipulation and financial abuse. I walked directly to the elevator bank and pressed the down button. My heart rate remained perfectly steady at a calm 68 beats per minute. My parents built Vanguard Freight on a foundation of aggressive mid-century sales tactics. They believe shouting into a telephone constitutes a profound business strategy. They view my brother Vance as the natural heir to this loud legacy. Vance is charismatic, but fundamentally illiterate regarding modern supply chain mathematics. He spends his afternoons taking clients to expensive 3-hour premium steak dinners. I spend my nights optimizing freight loads to save thousands of dollars per route. For 7 years, I was the unseen engine keeping their outdated company alive. I developed a proprietary predictive algorithm for advanced fuel consumption buffering. That specific software protocol reduced our quarterly operating expenses by exactly $412,850.22. Sir, I never received a single bonus or public credit for this massive financial intervention. My father claimed the algorithm was merely basic administrative maintenance. My mother said Vance's expensive dinners were the true source of our corporate wealth. They systematically stripped my technical achievements and applied them directly to my brother's executive resume. This toxic dynamic was not limited to standard corporate operations. It was the structural reality of our entire family hierarchy. 4 years ago, Vance aggressively expanded our shipping fleet without consulting the market data. He purchased 12 outdated diesel semi-trucks for exactly $1,850,000 in hard cash. It was a catastrophic capital expenditure that nearly bankrupted the entire firm. I worked 90 hours a week for 8 consecutive months to restructure the corporate debt. I liquidated my personal stock options to cover a massive automated payroll deficit. When the company finally stabilized, my father hosted a lavish victory dinner. He raised a glass of expensive champagne and toasted Vance for his resilient leadership. They framed my quiet financial rescue mission as an act of pathetic weakness. They told me I lacked the iron stomach for high-stakes executive risk. They confused my calculated damage control with a fundamental lack of ambition. They demanded I remain quietly in the shadows while they squandered the quarterly profits. I accepted this parasitic arrangement because I foolishly believed in blind family loyalty. I believed my structural contributions would eventually be properly acknowledged and financially rewarded. I was analyzing the wrong psychological data set entirely. They did not want an equal partner or a dedicated son. They simply wanted an indentured algorithmic servant who never demanded a fair market dividend. I walked away knowing their fragile infrastructure would inevitably collapse without my daily supervision. My parents never understood the digital architecture holding Vanguard Freight together. They assumed our automated dispatch system was merely a standard monthly software subscription. They did not know I custom-built the dynamic pricing matrix from absolute scratch. The matrix recalculates our regional freight bids every 42 milliseconds. It actively analyzes regional weather patterns and live diesel costs to maximize our daily profit. I wrote exactly 68,000 lines of complex Python code to completely automate this process. I hosted the entire central database on a highly secure private encrypted cloud server network. I personally paid the $842.15 monthly server maintenance fee from my own private checking account. I did this because the corporate accounting department refused to authorize the modern infrastructure expense. My father loudly called cloud computing a ridiculous technological financial scam. Because I personally funded the server hardware, I retained absolute legal ownership of the core root access keys. The logistics company merely licensed the software from me through an informal verbal agreement. See, they also took my automated load balancing protocol completely for granted every single day. This specific digital system routed our fleet to avoid heavy metropolitan traffic congestion. It saved our commercial drivers an average of 14 hours of wasted transit time every week. Vance honestly believed his aggressive phone calls secured our lucrative overnight shipping contracts. He did not know my software was silently underbidding our regional competitors by precisely 4%. I programmed the complex system to automatically submit these optimized bids while he was heavily sleeping. They stripped my corporate title and proudly canceled my executive building physical security badge. They completely forgot to secure the fragile digital perimeter of their own complex logistics network. So they arrogantly fired the sole network administrator of their proprietary freight bidding API. My physical presence in the boardroom was never the true source of my operational leverage. My actual power was permanently embedded inside the structural code of their daily commercial operations. I secretly held all the encrypted master administrative passwords to their entire corporate commercial survival. They carelessly handed me a formal termination paper without securing a proper software transition protocol. They effectively tossed the structural blueprints into the fire while standing inside a wooden house. I did not need to launch a malicious external cyber attack to permanently destroy them. I only needed to quietly turn off the automated administrative lights and walk away forever. So I waited exactly 48 hours to ensure the legal termination documents were officially filed. It was exactly 11:14 p.m. on a quiet Sunday when I opened my encrypted workstation. I accessed the primary administrative dashboard for the private cloud server network. This was the exact digital infrastructure that powered Vanguard Freight. My first action was purely financial and completely legal. I navigated to the automated billing portal for the server hosting provider. I deleted my personal titanium credit card from the active payment registry. The monthly digital infrastructure bill of $842.15 was scheduled to process at midnight. Because my card was removed, the payment gateway immediately registered a critical billing failure. The hosting provider instantly suspended the master server instance due to non-payment. This action cleanly severed the dynamic pricing matrix from the live internet. My second action was a simple revocation of access privileges. I generated a master command to invalidate all active API authentication tokens. An API token is essentially a digital VIP pass that connects different software systems. Vanguard Freight relied on these specific tokens to connect their dispatch screens to the freight board. I watched the active connection logs drop from 300 to absolute zero in 4 seconds. My final action was to reclaim my proprietary source code. I did not delete any data belonging to the logistics company. I simply migrated my automated load balancing protocol to an encrypted offline storage drive. I left them with the basic factory default routing software they had originally purchased. The factory software could not calculate live diesel costs or predict heavy traffic patterns. It was the digital equivalent of trading a modern sports car for a rusty bicycle. I executed these administrative tasks with the steady precision of a surgeon. I did not feel a trace of anger or lingering familial resentment. I was simply repossessing my own unpaid intellectual property from a hostile corporate entity. The withdrawal was mathematically clean and entirely protected under standard copyright law. At exactly 12:01 a.m. on Monday, the first wave of automated failure alerts triggered. My brother Vance would be asleep in his luxury downtown penthouse. He would not realize the entire automated bidding system had silently flatlined. Their entire fleet of 52 diesel trucks was now flying completely blind. The drivers would wake up to blank dispatch screens and zero optimized route data. The company would be forced to manually calculate freight bids using basic spreadsheets. A manual bid takes roughly 12 minutes to properly formulate and submit. My automated matrix used to submit 30 optimized bids per second. The shock to their operational capacity would be absolute and immediate. I closed the terminal and wiped my workstation cache. I poured a glass of cold mineral water and stood by my window. I looked at the dark skyline and drank the water slowly. The quiet severance was officially complete, and the corporate bleeding had formally begun. I went to sleep knowing my morning would be deeply peaceful. The corporate panic materialized exactly at 6:14 a.m. on Monday. My personal smartphone began to vibrate with a sustained rhythm on my glass nightstand. The caller identification displayed my brother Vance's direct office extension. I let the phone ring 7 times before muting the device entirely. I opened my encrypted email client to review the inbound automated system alerts. Vanguard Freight had officially missed 14 consecutive guaranteed delivery windows before sunrise. The unoptimized dispatch software had routed 3 premium refrigerated trucks into severe structural gridlock near Portland. The cascading logistical failures were instantly generating massive financial penalties across our entire regional network. At 7:30 a.m., my father sent an aggressively capitalized email from his iPad. He bypassed standard corporate protocols and utilized his personal email account. He demanded I immediately log into the master server and fix the broken routing matrix. He framed the catastrophic system failure as a childish temper tantrum I was throwing out of spite. He threatened to sue me for severe breach of fiduciary duty if the dispatch screens remained blank. He fundamentally failed to realize that terminating my employment instantly dissolved any existing fiduciary obligations. I was legally categorized as a completely unaffiliated private citizen. My mother initiated her emotional manipulation sequence at exactly 8:45 a.m. She left a 4-minute voicemail engineered to project maximum maternal disappointment. She claimed Vance was experiencing severe chest pains from the extreme corporate stress. She said a major client was threatening to invoke a strict service level agreement penalty of $125,500. So she pleaded with me to restore the digital architecture to save our family legacy from total ruin. She promised we could discuss a minor consultant fee once the trucks were properly moving again. Her definition of a minor fee was historically an insult to basic economic dignity. Vance resorted to aggressive physical intimidation tactics just before noon. He arrived at my secure apartment building and demanded the concierge grant him elevator access. The concierge referenced the strict denial list I submitted exactly 12 hours prior. Vance screamed at the lobby staff and threatened to have the building management fired. He sent me a text message stating he would physically break my door down to retrieve the server passwords. He called me a pathetic weakling hiding behind a computer screen while real men suffered. He believed raw aggression could somehow compile complex Python routing code. I did not reply to the hostile text messages or the weeping voicemails. I forwarded the specific physical threat regarding my heavy apartment door to a highly specialized private security consultant. I meticulously documented every single inbound communication using a strictly time-stamped digital evidence ledger. I calculated their current morning losses at approximately $48,220.50 in missed freight bids alone. They were rapidly drowning in the exact unoptimized operational environment they had proudly demanded. They desperately wanted to control me through a predictable combination of baseless legal threats and guilt. I poured a fresh cup of black coffee and quietly prepared my formal administrative response. I initiated the forensic data compilation at exactly 1:15 p.m. Vanguard Freight was structured as an S corporation. This specific legal designation required public filing of all major commercial debt covenants. I accessed the Federal Uniform Commercial Code database using my active corporate registry credentials. This system is known in the financial sector as a secured asset registry. It actively tracks exactly who owns the physical assets of any distressed commercial company. I downloaded 42 pages of raw mezzanine debt agreements. I discovered my father had quietly collateralized our entire diesel fleet. He secured a high-yield emergency bridge loan at a brutal 14% interest rate. He signed the promissory note precisely 3 days before terminating my employment. The complex terms of the loan required strict maintenance of a minimum quarterly revenue threshold. If Vanguard Freight missed that specific threshold, the corporate lender could immediately seize all physical assets. I cross-referenced this fragile debt structure with their live dispatch failure rates. I used a legally obtained commercial freight monitoring feed to track their movements. It clearly showed Vance was frantically booking low-yield transport contracts just to keep trucks moving. He was accepting heavy freight loads that paid exactly $1.12 per mile. The actual operating cost of an aging diesel truck is $1.40 per mile. He was mathematically incinerating 28 cents of pure capital every single mile his drivers drove. I documented this catastrophic operational bleed in a heavily annotated financial model. I did not stop at simply analyzing the financial failures of my own family. I turned my quantitative focus toward their absolute primary regional rival. The rival transport company was formerly named Apex Logistics. Apex was currently valued at exactly $14 million. They possessed superior physical warehouse infrastructure, but suffered from severely outdated dispatch technology. I quickly compiled a comprehensive acquisition target dossier on Apex. I highlighted their massive untapped digital scaling potential for future investors. I drafted a highly technical 30-page financial prospectus. I outlined a brutal hostile takeover strategy leveraging my proprietary routing algorithm. I carefully packaged the debt filings, the negative revenue models, and the Apex acquisition blueprint into one encrypted digital vault. I was building a financial guillotine constructed entirely from publicly available corporate data. I securely sent the Apex dossier to 3 aggressive venture capital firms in New York. I requested an immediate capitalization meeting for a hostile regional consolidation play. My family genuinely believed this was a simple emotional dispute over lost server passwords. They truly thought I was merely pouting alone in my dark city apartment. They did not comprehend the sheer velocity of the corporate violence I was currently orchestrating. I locked the encrypted dossier and printed 3 pristine hard copies on heavy legal paper. I placed the documents in a leather binder. The final administrative trap was completely set. I sat back and waited for the inevitable financial impact. My retaliation was mathematically perfect. At exactly 2 p.m. on Wednesday, a formal courier arrived at my apartment. He delivered a heavy, notarized envelope containing a formal settlement offer. My father requested a mandatory mediation session at his private country club dining room. The invitation was framed as a polite gesture of reconciliation to heal our fractured corporate dynamic. I knew it was a desperate tactical ambush designed to force immediate technical compliance. Vanguard Freight was currently bleeding roughly $62,400 a day in unoptimized routing penalties. They were running out of liquid capital to fund their diesel fleet operations. I accepted the invitation solely to observe their structural panic in person. So I arrived at the mahogany dining room at precisely 4 p.m. My father, my mother, and my brother Vance were already seated around a large circular table. Vance looked physically exhausted, and his bespoke suit was noticeably wrinkled. My father pushed a thick binder across the white linen tablecloth. He offered me a single severance payment of exactly $50,000 to fully dissolve our dispute. The payment was strictly contingent upon my immediate installation of the proprietary routing matrix. He commanded me to sign the document and restore their operational capacity before dinner. He actually called the insulting sum a generous olive branch from a forgiving patriarch. My mother smiled warmly and poured me a glass of sparkling water. She softly explained that refusing this offer would permanently destroy my professional reputation. She claimed my father had already drafted letters to every major logistics broker in the region. The letters falsely accused me of executing a malicious cyber attack against their servers. They were threatening to systematically blacklist me from the entire regional supply chain industry. Vance leaned across the table and whispered that I had absolutely zero leverage left. They believed isolating me in an affluent environment would trigger my historical financial submission. I did not touch the sparkling water or open the heavy legal binder. I simply calculated the mathematical absurdity of their aggressive negotiation strategy. They were attempting to purchase a piece of software worth millions for $50,000. They were using phantom leverage because they fundamentally lacked any real commercial power. So I looked directly at my father and stated that I do not sign restrictive covenants. I told him his proposed severance payout barely covered 3 days of their current operational losses. I explained that blacklisting me was impossible because I was no longer seeking corporate employment. I stood up from the circular table and adjusted my tailored jacket. I informed them their emergency bridge loan was highly vulnerable to an immediate technical default. I watched the color drain completely from my father's arrogant face. He realized I had accessed the public secured asset registry and discovered his toxic debt. Vance attempted to grab my arm, but I stepped back with calculated precision. I walked out of the silent dining room and handed the valet my parking ticket. The false truce was rejected, and their operational timeline was rapidly collapsing. The annual Pacific Northwest Logistics Summit was held on Friday. The venue was the Grand Ballroom of the Seattle Fairmont. Over 400 regional industry executives were in attendance. My father was scheduled to deliver a keynote address on modern fleet resilience at precisely 10:30 a.m. He intended to project an aura of total corporate dominance to his regional peers. He did not know I had finalized the hostile acquisition of Apex Logistics precisely 12 hours earlier. The venture capital firms had fully funded my $14 million buyout strategy. I walked into the grand ballroom at 10:15 a.m. I wore a perfectly tailored midnight blue suit and a titanium watch. I sat in the front row, directly facing the main podium. I watched my father step up to the microphone. He looked incredibly tired, and his hands were visibly shaking. He began to speak about his decades of reliable freight management. He claimed Vanguard Freight was currently experiencing unprecedented quarterly growth. I stood up and walked up the side stairs to the main stage. I bypassed the stunned event coordinator and approached the podium. I did not shout or make a dramatic, emotional scene. I plugged my encrypted tablet into the main presentation projection system. The massive 60-foot LED screen behind my father instantly illuminated. It displayed the raw mezzanine debt default notice from his commercial lender. Before I describe his reaction, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever exposed a massive lie in front of an audience? Tell me the exact details of your public confrontation in the comments below. Let us return to the stage. I tapped my tablet screen to advance the visual presentation. The screen now displayed the live operational metrics of Vanguard Freight. It showed their current routing efficiency was operating at a catastrophic -40%. I spoke clearly into the secondary microphone. I informed the 400 executives that Vanguard Freight was actively defaulting on their primary bridge loan. I stated that their entire diesel fleet was currently scheduled for commercial repossession by Monday morning. My brother Vance sprinted onto the stage to violently unplug the projection system. He was exactly 3 full seconds too late. I advanced to the final slide of my presentation. It displayed the official corporate acquisition documents for Apex Logistics. It listed me as the new Chief Executive Officer and sole architectural engineer. I calmly explained that Apex had just absorbed all of Vanguard's frustrated regional clients. I stated that my proprietary routing algorithm was now exclusively powering the Apex fleet. My father grabbed the podium and gasped for air. The entire ballroom erupted into chaotic whispers and frantic mobile phone calls. Regional freight brokers were immediately canceling their active contracts with my family. I unplugged my tablet and walked down the center aisle. I did not look back at the shattered remains of their corporate empire. The public corporate demolition was a complete and mathematically flawless success from every angle. The financial implosion of Vanguard Freight concluded precisely at 8:30 a.m. on Monday. The commercial lender executed a standard writ of replevin against my vulnerable father. This legal document authorizes the immediate physical seizure of all collateralized corporate assets. A synchronized fleet of 30 heavy recovery tow trucks arrived at the Vanguard shipping yard. They systematically hooked up all 52 diesel transport trucks and towed them away. My brother Vance was physically escorted off the commercial property by armed private security contractors. He was forced to surrender his corporate vehicle and walk 3 miles to the transit station. By Tuesday afternoon, the corporate bleeding reached the personal private assets of my parents. They had foolishly signed a strict personal guarantee to secure their massive emergency bridge loan. A personal guarantee completely erodes the standard legal boundary between corporate debt and private wealth. The bank immediately placed a hard lien on their primary residential waterfront luxury estate. This specific property was valued at exactly $4,120,000. Their personal banking portfolios were instantly frozen, pending a massive federal Chapter 7 bankruptcy audit. My mother could not access her premium checking account to pay her basic household utility bills. Vance attempted to secure an executive logistics position at 3 different regional commercial transport firms. He was uniformly rejected by their human resources departments before the initial interview phase even began. The public humiliation at the logistics summit had permanently destroyed his professional regional industry reputation. No rational commercial enterprise would hire a man who bankrupted his own family fleet in 10 days. The local supply chain ecosystem completely absorbed the massive regional vacuum left by Vanguard Freight. I sat in my new executive office at the Apex Logistics corporate headquarters. I watched our live digital routing matrix automatically optimize 600 daily regional freight loads. Apex was now generating a net profit margin of 22% above the standard baseline. I received a frantic automated email from the Vanguard Corporate Domain Registration Server network. It was a standardized government notification confirming their complete and total corporate legal dissolution. So the family legacy built on aggressive ignorance was officially erased from the commercial public registry. Their generational wealth was completely pulverized by the exact technological infrastructure they consistently refused to understand. They had finally experienced the true mathematical weight of the complex systems they had arrogantly discarded. It is Friday morning. I am sitting at my custom glass desk, overlooking the busy commercial port of Seattle. The Apex logistics servers are humming at a perfect core temperature of 68 degrees. I am reviewing the final quarterly consolidation report on my secondary monitor. Our regional market capture rate is now exactly 94%. The chaotic, emotional tax of my family is permanently liquidated. I feel a profound, absolute stillness in my chest. My former relatives are currently navigating complex federal bankruptcy hearings in a sterile municipal courthouse. I am no longer their designated financial shock absorber. I am simply the chief architect of a highly optimized supply chain machine. Before we archive this final operational ledger, I have one last question for you. What is the most ruthless boundary you have ever established to protect your own peace? Drop your exact administrative protocol in the comments below. Let us finish this final system update. True power is never loud. True power does not require screaming in a boardroom or wearing bespoke suits. Power is the quiet mastery of the underlying structural variables. It is the cold execution of mathematical logic against emotional entitlement. My internal ledger is finally balanced. The infected corporate variables are completely removed from my operational environment. My daily digital infrastructure is perfectly sterile. I built an impenetrable fortress out of raw logistics data and basic market efficiency. The architectural blueprint of my success is built on their deliberate ignorance. I am completely free. I know that I will never again allow another human being to blindly manipulate my technical expertise for their own selfish capital gains. My professional boundaries are now mathematically absolute and permanently encrypted against all future emotional hacking attempts.